Good evening, this is Newsline. I'm Michael Chigani. Tonight, how much should bosses pay workers? I have with me a boss and a labor unionist. Well, thank you both for being on this show, a boss and a labor unionist. Let me introduce you. Now you're Brian Rennick, and you're the vice chairman of the Employees Federation of Hong Kong, right? And Lei Chut Yan, obviously a unionist legislator, you've been here many times before. We're going to talk about minimum wage. How much should bosses pay their workers? I'm going to start with you, Lei Chut Yan, because you've been fighting this battle for a long time. There is now talk that a commission has recommended to the chief executive that the minimum wage per hour should be $28. It's not confirmed, but I think it's around that figure. You don't think that's enough? Why not?
Of course, when you look at the figure 28, and you calculate back to the monthly wage, it's only about 5,800. So my question is...
So if it's $28 an hour, it's 5,800 a month?
Yeah, that's right. So my question is, can you live on $5,800? Especially,
can you?
Of course not. When you look at, especially if you are, having a family, and on the average, Hong Kong people, one person had to feed one more mouth. So when you look at that, on the CSSA basis, the welfare recipient will, for a person of two, they will get about $6,000. And then if you go out to work, you have to go out to eat, you have to travel. So our calculation that is at least 6,800
for a family of how many?
For a family of two only. Assuming if you have a family of four, I would assume the two-person come out to work. So it's a very, very modest.
Let me try and get this straight first. If it's $28 an hour, then you make $5,800 a month. But you're saying that if a couple are unemployed and they get social welfare, they end up getting $6,000.
Yeah, that's right. Without going out to work.
Right.
And also, you don't have the need travel expenses. And
but if both the people they end up getting $6,000 if they don't work, but if they both get minimum wage, they'll still get like $10,000, $12,000 if it's $28 an hour.
Yeah.
If they both work.
If they both work. But I assume that one person to have to feed another mouth. So if there's a family of four, so you need really two person coming out to work in order to feed a family of four. So to put it simply, ours are a living wage, more than that of a CSSA, and so we believe that this is a very, very modest demand, and that that's also encouraged workers to come out to look for a job
rather than get welfare.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
Brian Rennick, Vice Chairman of Employees Federation of Hong Kong, right? So you represent businesses in Hong Kong.
Yes.
And you've just heard what Lei Chut Yan said, $28 an hour. I think that's probably going to be the figure that has been recommended to Chief Executive Donald Tsang. Lei Chut Yan says that's not enough. I think you're saying that it's more than enough. Is that right?
Well, there are two things about this. I mean, Lei Chut Yan's argument is a very sound argument in one respect, except that this law was never intended to be a living wage. The government set out as one of its principles that this was a wage floor. It wasn't intended to be a living wage. Now, one could argue about that as to whether it's the right thing or not, but that's the fact as it is at the moment. So that's point number one. Point number two, our members told us very clearly that they could live with $24 an hour, and every extra bit that was increased on 24.
Who can live on 24? You mean employers don't mind paying $24 an hour?
Could live with that. And every bit more was going to make it more and more difficult, particularly for some of the marginal unemployed. So that's point number two. Point number three is wherever you set it now, it's only going to go up. I mean, rationally, however you look at things, whether there's a downturn or an upturn, that pay, it's going to be reviewed every couple of years.
So you're saying that the $28, if it's set at $28, is going to go all the way up? It's never going to come down?
It's never going to come down. I mean, being realistic, how could it ever come down?
But to be also realistic, Mr. Rennick, how do you say employees don't mind paying workers $24 an hour?
I said they can live with it.
Okay, they can live with it. Lei Chut Yan says you can't live with $28 an hour, a family. The employers can live with paying workers $24 an hour, but can the worker live on that?
As I say, the question is not whether they can live on it or not. There are, in fact, supplements to CSSA, as you know, that enable people both to earn a living and to get some CSSA on top of that.
But why should that happen?
Again, it's CSSA. So Brian is coming back that, you know, government should come in to subsidize employer in a sense.
Employers?
It's not a subsidized employee, it's subsidized employer who are paying low wage.
Yes. Well, that may or may not be true. As I say, at the present moment, the law is intended not to be a living wage. The law is intended to be a wages floor. And the government said that many, many, many times. So, as I say, whether you like it or I like it or you like it, that's the situation.
Yeah, that part I agree. You know, that's the position of the government. But again, we have always, you know, argue against that because, you know, Hong Kong should respect international covenant. And one of the covenant that they have ratified is the International Covenant on Economic and Social Cultural Rights. And in that, you know, it's very clear stipulated that, you know, any country to ratify that covenant should enable workers to feed their families.
But tell me this, as a unionist, do other countries with minimum wage, the US, Australia, UK, most of Europe, is there, when they have a minimum wage, is that a livable wage or a wage floor? Subsidized with taxpayers' money?
Yeah, of course, you know, in other countries, you know, they also set a minimum wage. And when you look at the British minimum wage, it's now about £7. So imagine £7, you know, it's far more than that.
That's like $100 an hour.
Yeah, but I mean, Chagan, as you well know, the British are now regretting that they pushed it up so much. They think they started off at 40% of the median wage, which is where our $24 comes from, by the way. But I think if you talk to the British government and the British Parliament, they all recognise that moving to £7 was too much too quickly. And I think it has actually caused some problems in the UK. And I will also say about other countries too, nearly all of them, but they all vary in their percentage of minimum wage. Some are 40%, some are 50, some are even higher than that of the minimum wage. But you've really got to look around the countries of Europe and you look at the youth unemployment, which is absolutely appalling in places like France and Spain. And you have to say, why is that? Is it because...
Are you blaming that on minimum wage?
I'm not totally, but absolutely not. But it has to be a contributing factor. And this has always been our concern here. And I'm glad to see some changes have been made, for example, to internships and various other things in the structure of this law. But if you push the minimum wage too high, the people who are going to suffer are the young people and possibly even the poor people, because I don't think
Leitcher is going to buy that argument. Do you buy that argument? If you have too high a minimum wage, it's going to cause unemployment.
Of course, if you have such a high minimum wage that, you know, say $50.
Well, he's saying even $28 is going to cause...
So it's all, you know, I don't want to say that if you have too high. If you have $50 per hour, of course, you know, it would cause problem. But what we are talking about is, say, using
what you want is $30 or $33.
$33,
is that going to cause unemployment?
Of course not, because it only represents 1.6% increase in the total wage bill of Hong Kong. So are we saying that we cannot in Hong Kong, you know, and
pay out an extra 1.6%?
Exactly.
Why can't you put a 1.6% is not a lot.
It isn't for the total wage bill of Hong Kong. But if you're a small restaurant struggling to survive, and it's a great deal more than 1.6% to you to add that to your wages bill. So it's a lot more than that. It might even be double. Probably not, but it could be something like a third more. Now that's a hell of a lot for a small restaurant struggling to.
But the problem with small restaurant, and actually the problem with Hong Kong and for business, is that the wage are the rents are too high. And so every time when we talk about minimum wage, I always say that actually it's the rent that kill the economy.
I agree with that.
Not the wages. And then every time when we talk about wages, then they say that, if you set it too high, we will sack people. But actually they are sacking people already. They are closing it
because of high rent.
Because of high rent.
Yeah, why aren't the employers fighting against high rent? They're fighting against paying their workers a decent wage, but they're not fighting against the greed of landlords and so on.
Well, you use the word greed. It's a market forces argument. It's the same as pay when it comes down to it. Pay is a market forces thing. If there is a big demand for people, the cost of those people go up. If there's a big demand for property and for rents, for business premises, the cost of that goes up. You've only got to look back to the last crisis in 2002, 2003, the SARS area. Rents halved. They halved because the market drove them down. It wasn't because landlords were getting greedier or less greedy. It was a market forces argument. So you can't really say that if you've got 10 people wanting to rent this shop in Causeway Bay, you can't really say the landlord should take the lowest bid. That is
yeah, but what you are saying, Mr. Renning, or what the business sector is saying is that if you have too high a minimum wage, then it's going to cause problems for the business people. But you're not saying that high rents are also causing a problem for the business people.
High rents, of course they cause problems for business people. Of course they do. If you're running a marginal business and your rent goes up by 50%, even though you can rationally accept that it might need to do so because of market forces, it's still going to cause you problems. Absolutely no question.
Well, but then that's the problem. Business, said that, okay, high rent is a problem, but then they cannot do anything about it. So the best way out is to bully the workers. That's not the way a society should be structured. There's a lot of talking about the so-called hate rich
well, there's this new theme going on in Hong Kong that there's an anti-business sentiment.
But come on, that exactly is where it comes in. Every time when there's a problem, it's the workers that the weak and marginalized that are suffering, and always take all the crisis. When you have financial crisis, you cut the wages, you sack people, and transfer the crisis to the workers. And now we are trying to say, okay, please don't this time don't transfer the crisis to workers. At least give us some protection. And then you are saying that that is too high. We should not give so much protection for the workers to live. But exactly why people are so angry about the business community is because they don't really care about the workers that really work hard for them.
I've got just 30 seconds before the break. Are you worried about this new anger against the business community?
Very much so. I think it's...
Tell us why.
It's misdirected for a start, but that's the fair-unfair argument. That's not the point. The point is that Hong Kong, like every other city, depends upon business for its survival. Every cent that you earn, every cent that you earn, every cent that I earn depends upon business. If society, by implication, is saying business is bad, business is corrupt, business is letting us down, then it's going to be a serious problem for everybody. So whilst one can understand people being worried about poverty and worried about having too many rich people and so on, the fact is we need business, and we need profitable business. Business is pointless if it doesn't make profit.
We'll pick it up after the break. Don't go away. See you soon.